Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking to you about pattern recognition, how to use pattern recognition as a life hack. So one of the reasons why humanity has built so much in a small span of time is because of pattern recognition. Very observant people have discovered and harnessed patterns for their everyday lives and built what you see today. Using nature as a guide, we mimic the best that nature has to offer. And it applies to pattern recognition in our own lives as well, using it for our own personal gain, understanding people, and learning things faster. Essentially, if we're able to master it, we can be a better version of ourselves. Because the more we're able to understand patterns in the world, the more we are able to predict the things that are going on around us. And without it, there's a possibility of us making the same mistake over and over again, never learning from it. Recognizing and learning patterns has been a great boost in my own personal life. I've done a lot of personal growth and development because I've recognized these patterns. And these tips that I've learned can help others recognize patterns in their own lives as well. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the background in pattern recognition, my tips, and my general thoughts on this. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, hit that notification bell if you like this content. And let's go. If I had to say what the closest thing I have to a superpower was, it's pattern recognition, 100% all the time. Seeing patterns develop early on helped me to understand the world as it is. And it's helped me to craft a proper understanding of the world very early on in my life. Using it, I'm able to predict certain things that's going to happen, and I benefited greatly from that knowledge. And I also used it to help me avoid negative situations and people throughout my life. It has also helped me to understand my own personal limitations and struggle that I've had. It's not only that I can see patterns, but that I can recognize them early on as a pattern. This also allowed me to take advantage of certain situations where I recognized the pattern faster than my friends did, and I was able to take advantage of that. Although for my general tips, I'm just going to focus on recognizing that there's a pattern in the first place. The speed at which you recognize patterns will come eventually with practice. With this skill, you'll be able to change your life in a way you never thought you could. So now let's go through some of my tips on how to recognize patterns. Number 1, an open mind. This is the key for recognizing patterns in the first place. By having an open mind, you're able to take all the inputs that's coming to you. Patterns by nature isn't very obvious unless you know exactly what you're looking for. And it rarely will be spelled out for you unless it's a formal educational setting. Being open to new information and changing your mind about that is the key to understanding patterns. So for example, say you had a friend that does a lot of questionable things. Do you ignore it, or do you continue believing that they aren't a bad person? In your open mind, is there a possibility that your friend could actually be a bad apple? By keeping an open mind, you allow the possibility of seeing him in both a bad and a good person. And that could really help you in making the decision whether or not you stay friends with that person or not. Because whether we like it or not, we as humans have patterns of behavior, and we don't really change them unless we're really forced to. So an open mind helps keep your observational skills sharp, so you'll be able to recognize patterns better. So for me, I also practice compartmentalization, putting information in different buckets so I don't get biased in any one certain thing. This way I can take various different opinions, think about it later down the line, and come up with my final answer. Compartmentalization has really helped me not to take sides of a situation without thinking through it first. So by having an open mind, you introduce the possibility of having different thoughts and ideas. And this is the first step in pattern recognition, to not judge any one information without seeing the entire picture. Number 2, patience is a must. When you are first trying to recognize a pattern, it's not going to be quick or easy. This takes a lot of time to build up that muscle so you're recognizing patterns more quickly and efficiently. This is because your mind takes a lot of time collecting that information and then creating a narrative story around it, or seeing how all the information fits together in something that's recognizable as a pattern. Sometimes patterns are straightforward. For example, my stamina sucks, therefore I need to exercise more to build up my stamina. And that stamina is directly due to my lack of cardiovascular exercising. So the pattern in this case is easy. Exercise more to gain more stamina. But sometimes pattern recognition can be very hard. For example, finding a good spouse when you're dating. You're trying to see over time the good and bad habits of your potential spouse and any red flags. This can take quite a long time during the dating process, and not everybody will be very forthcoming of it, so patience is a must. Whatever the situation or issue you may have some patience, observe carefully, and take notes. This period of information gathering is really necessary for you to collect all the information to create a narrative around your pattern. And the more time you take, the less chance there's a mistake in your pattern. And by being able to identify the right pattern, you'll be able to make the right decision going forward. So practice patience when learning a new pattern. Number 3, use brain aids. Our brains are what connects information and creates a pattern in the end, but sometimes your brain can be really bad at it. We tend to create biases with our facts and sometimes forget them altogether. So when you're going to create a pattern, use aids as much as possible through journaling, notepad, or even other people. I use this all the time. When I'm really trying to find a pattern, I try to write down everything relevant and store it in a place that I can easily access. Normally, all of this would be done in your head, but sometimes it's just too much information for you to remember. And when you're trying to remember something, you might get distracted and completely forget about it in the end. The gist of this is to first write down all your facts in a notepad, and then talk to others about how it creates different connections, and then finally create that narrative story in your journal. The other benefit is that when you write something down, you can focus your mind on creating connections, not remembering facts. This is a much faster process than keeping all the information in your head and making connections to it. So use tools to help you find patterns much more efficiently. Number 4, emotions as a guide. When you are constantly feeling the same emotion over and over and you don't know where it comes from, you might have found a pattern. Emotions are a very powerful indicator of something going on underneath the surface of you, and it can help you point you in the right direction of what you're feeling and what the pattern is behind it. For example, if you're constantly feeling sad or angry, find the common trigger that's causing these emotions. Because it's really important to get to the root of that specific problem and find the pattern behind it. If I'm feeling a certain way and I don't really know what's causing it, I take time in a quiet environment to try to figure that out. And I keep asking myself the 5 whys until I get to the real root of the issue. Check out my link to the 5 whys if you want to know more about this process that I use. And once I find the answer, I'm able to recognize the pattern behind it or what's causing that pattern. And then I go through the work of changing or adapting my circumstances so that I'm no longer triggered by those negative emotions. This can also work for positive emotions as well. If you're feeling joyful or happy all the time, find out what's causing it. And ask yourself what's the root of your happiness and how and if you can sustain that happiness over a long period of time. So use your emotions as a guide to help you recognize patterns within your own life. It can pay you dividends down the line. And number 5, know when you're wrong. Lastly, if you have a firm idea of your story or narrative about your pattern, be careful you don't go down the wrong path. This path is falling down the trap of believing that you're 100% right about your pattern. Always leave room for more information and the possibility that it might not be what you expected. Because when you start to create connections and pattern, your brain takes over and start to build connections. Sometimes they might not make the right connections, because some of the assumptions that you made from your point of view might not be reality or fact. Because at the end of the day, you might not have all the information and you might have blind spots when it comes to creating your pattern. I have on many occasions been wrong of a certain pattern that I was convinced that I was right. This was specifically in people that had certain characteristic traits or red flags that I thought they had. And I fully admit that I didn't take the time or patience to fully understand that person. And that I can't make a rash judgment about a certain person as soon as I meet them. So this has helped me to become a better person through understanding that time and patience are needed when you're trying to understand a person, that rash judgments aren't good for anyone. So when you think you have a pattern, leave open the possibilities that you might be wrong and course correct once you have that new information available to you. So here are my general thoughts on pattern recognition. I think that finding patterns in life, especially when you're first starting out, can be very difficult. It requires a specific part of your brain and takes a lot of focus and attention to detail to observe something. And you have to keep thinking about it, taking new information to recognize a pattern from it. And once you do, you create a story or narrative around it to button it up. And not everybody thinks it's worth the effort to try it, do it, and then get better at it. If you're watching this, then I believe you have the time and energy to go try it and recognize more patterns in your life. Start with simple patterns in your life and work your way up. Maybe play a pattern recognition game. And work your way up to more complex patterns. That way you'll train your brain to recognize them as they come along. Then you'll be able to make links much easier and see patterns throughout your daily life. So those are my tips on how to find and recognize more patterns in your life. Whether you like it or not, patterns are all around us, and if you can notice and take advantage of them, you're in a much better position for the rest of your life. It allows you to see what others cannot and also help you avoid bad patterns that can harm you. Just remember, patterns are in everything: people, nature, and every system. So I hope you learned a little bit about how to recognize patterns in everyday life. So thank you for watching. Please leave me a comment down below on what kind of patterns have you recognized and what advice would you give. And I'll see you next time.